Picture this. Your girlfriend mentions she'd love a horse, and most guys would hit up the local stable, maybe drop a few grand on a nice mare. But Elvis Presley? Oh no, the king doesn't do anything halfway. When Priscilla Presley casually mentioned wanting a horse, Elvis didn't just buy her one horse, he bought her an entire 163-acre ranch. We're talking about a man who turned a simple request into a multi-million-dollar real estate acquisition that would make today's influencers weep with envy. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most extravagant romantic gestures in entertainment history. You're about to discover how Elvis turned Priscilla's innocent horse dream into a sprawling ranch empire, the shocking amount of money he spent, and why this story perfectly captures the absolute madness of being Elvis Presley in the 1960s. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at relationship goals the same way again. So buckle up, because we're about to explore how the king of rock and roll redefined what it means to spoil your woman. Let me paint you a picture of how this whole insane story began. And trust me, it's going to blow your mind. How a simple conversation between two young people in love spiraled into one of the most extravagant purchases in celebrity history. We're talking about the mid-1960s here. When Elvis was at the absolute peak of his fame, money was flowing like water, and Priscilla Presley was still just a teenager living at Graceland, trying to figure out her place in this whirlwind world of fame and fortune. Picture this scene. Priscilla, barely out of her teens, probably sitting in one of Graceland's lavishly decorated rooms, maybe looking out at the sprawling grounds when she turns to Elvis with what she thought was a completely innocent request. She mentions how much she'd always loved horses, how she dreamed of having one of her own, maybe riding through peaceful trails away from the chaos of Elvis's celebrity lifestyle. In her mind, she was probably thinking about a single horse, maybe a small stable, something simple and manageable that would give her a peaceful escape from the intensity of being Elvis Presley's girlfriend. But here's where it gets absolutely crazy, and this is why Elvis was unlike any other man on the planet. Most boyfriends would have said, "Sure, honey, let's go horse shopping this weekend." Maybe visited a few local farms, picked out a nice horse, and built a small stable behind the house. But Elvis Presley wasn't wired like normal people. When Elvis heard, "I want a horse," his brain immediately translated that into, "I need to create an entire equestrian empire worthy of the woman I love." The man was constitutionally incapable of thinking small. This was the same guy who would rent out entire movie theaters just so he and his friends could watch films in private, who would buy cars for complete strangers on a whim, and who once purchased 30 Cadillacs in a single day just because he was feeling generous. So when the love of his life mentioned wanting a horse, Elvis's mind immediately started racing with possibilities that would make most people's heads spin. What's absolutely fascinating is how this moment perfectly captured the essence of who Elvis was as both a performer and a partner. He approached love the same way he approached music, with complete, overwhelming intensity and a total disregard for conventional limits. While other men might have worried about budgets or practicality, Elvis was already envisioning something spectacular, something that would not only fulfill Priscilla's wish, but exceed it in ways she never could have imagined. The timing of this request couldn't have been more perfect either. Elvis was riding high on his movie career. The money was rolling in faster than he could spend it, and he was desperately looking for ways to show Priscilla how much she meant to him. Remember, this was a complicated relationship. She was young, he was a global superstar, and there was constant pressure from the outside world questioning their relationship. Every gesture Elvis made was partly romantic and partly a statement to the world about his commitment to this woman. You have to understand the context of Elvis's spending habits to truly appreciate what happened next. This was a man who thought nothing of buying jewelry that cost more than most people's houses. who would charter private jets just to get peanut butter sandwiches from a specific deli in Colorado, and who treated money like it was an infinite resource. When Elvis decided to do something, he didn't just do it. He created an experience, a story, a moment that would be remembered forever. But what makes this story even more incredible is what it reveals about Priscilla's influence on Elvis. Here was a woman who could make the king of rock and roll completely lose his mind with joy just by expressing a simple wish. The fact that he immediately started planning something enormous shows just how deeply he was affected by her happiness. This wasn't just about buying a horse. This was about creating a world where Priscilla could be completely happy and free. The build-up to what happened next is what makes this story so compelling. Elvis didn't just wake up one morning and decide to buy a ranch. He spent time thinking about it, probably driving his staff crazy with his excitement, making plans and calculations that would culminate in one of the most extravagant romantic gestures in entertainment history. This was Elvis at his most Elvis, completely over the top, absolutely sincere, and utterly unforgettable. And here's the kicker that's going to set up everything that follows. Elvis didn't tell Priscilla what he was planning. Imagine being in a relationship where your casual mention of wanting something could result in a surprise that would literally change the landscape of your life. This wasn't just gift-giving. This was reality reshaping, and it perfectly demonstrates why Elvis Presley remains one of the most fascinating figures in American cultural history. Hold on to your hats, because what Elvis did next is going to absolutely blow your mind and redefine everything you thought you knew about grand romantic gestures. When I tell you that Elvis bought Priscilla a ranch, I'm not talking about some cute little hobby farm with a red barn and a white picket fence. We're talking about a massive 163-acre spread that would make modern-day celebrities look like penny pinchers. Let me break down just how insane this purchase was. 163 acres. Do you have any idea how much land that actually is? We're talking about roughly 7 million square feet of prime Tennessee real estate, located strategically near Graceland, so Priscilla could easily travel between their main home and her new equestrian paradise. To put this in perspective, this ranch was larger than some entire towns, bigger than most golf courses, and absolutely dwarfed anything that a normal person would consider when thinking about housing a single horse. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. Elvis didn't just buy empty land and call it a day. Oh no, the king went full throttle and created what was essentially a luxury resort for horses and humans alike. We're talking about professional-grade stables that were built to standards that would make Kentucky Derby facilities jealous, multiple paddocks and training areas, riding trails that meandered through the most beautiful parts of the property, and facilities that could have easily housed dozens of horses in absolute luxury. The logistics of this purchase alone should have taken months of careful planning and consideration. Normal people spend weeks agonizing over buying a car or choosing a vacation destination. But Elvis saw some land, decided it was perfect for Priscilla's horse dreams, and basically said, "I'll take it all." The paperwork, the inspections, the legal complications of acquiring that much property. Elvis's team probably went into overdrive, trying to make their boss's vision a reality as quickly as possible. What absolutely kills me about this whole situation is imagining the conversation between Elvis and his financial advisors. Picture these serious business professionals trying to maintain their composure, while Elvis enthusiastically explains why he needs to purchase enough land to start his own small country, all because his girlfriend mentioned wanting a horse. These poor people probably thought Elvis had completely lost his mind, but they knew better than to argue with the man who was single-handedly funding their entire operation. The ranch wasn't just about the land either. Elvis made sure every single detail was absolutely perfect for Priscilla's enjoyment. We're talking about custom-built facilities that were designed specifically with her needs and preferences in mind, professional-grade equipment that most serious equestrians could only dream of having access to, and amenities that turned what should have been a simple horse stable into a luxury retreat that could rival any high-end resort. Think about the environmental impact and the planning that went into this purchase. 163 acres of land requires serious infrastructure, water systems, electrical installations, road maintenance, security considerations, and ongoing upkeep that would require a full-time staff just to maintain properly. Elvis wasn't just buying Priscilla a place to keep a horse. He was essentially creating a small business operation that would require constant attention and investment for years to come. The location choice was absolutely brilliant from a strategic standpoint. By purchasing land near Graceland, Elvis ensured that Priscilla could maintain her connection to their primary residence while still having her own private sanctuary where she could pursue her equestrian interests without the constant pressure of living in the spotlight. This wasn't just thoughtful, it was emotionally intelligent in a way that shows how deeply Elvis understood Priscilla's need for both connection and independence. But here's what makes this story even more amazing. Elvis managed to keep this entire massive real estate transaction a secret until he was ready to surprise Priscilla with it. Imagine coordinating the purchase of 163 acres of land, all the construction and preparation work, and all the logistical complications without your girlfriend finding out about it. This required a level of coordination and secrecy that would challenge most government operations, all in service of creating the perfect surprise for the woman he loved. The ranch represented everything that made Elvis special as both a performer and a person. Just like his music, he couldn't do anything halfway. It had to be bigger, better, and more spectacular than anything anyone else would even think to attempt. This wasn't just about buying Priscilla a horse. This was about creating an entire world where she could be completely happy and fulfilled, regardless of what it cost or how complicated it made Elvis's life. Now here's where this incredible story reaches its absolutely mind-blowing conclusion, and I guarantee you're going to walk away from this with a completely new understanding of what it meant to be loved by Elvis Presley. The ranch wasn't just a one-time purchase. It became a symbol of everything that made Elvis both the most generous man in entertainment history and a perfect example of how love can make people do absolutely extraordinary things that defy all logic and reason. When Priscilla first saw the ranch, her reaction was everything Elvis had hoped for, and more. Picture this moment. Elvis, probably barely able to contain his excitement, driving Priscilla to this massive property and watching her face as she slowly realized that all of this, every acre, every building, every fence post, belonged to her. The sheer scale of the gesture was so overwhelming that it took her time to even process what had happened. This wasn't just a gift. It was Elvis literally reshaping reality to match Priscilla's dreams. But the ranch became much more than just a place to keep horses. It evolved into Priscilla's personal sanctuary, a place where she could escape the incredible pressure of being Elvis Presley's partner and just be herself. Think about what that meant in the context of their relationship. Elvis was one of the most recognizable people on the planet, constantly surrounded by fans, media, and hangers-on who wanted pieces of his attention and energy. The ranch gave Priscilla something that was entirely her own, a space where she could develop her own interests and identity separate from Elvis's overwhelming fame. The financial impact of this purchase was absolutely staggering, even by Elvis's standards. We're talking about not just the initial cost of acquiring 163 acres of prime Tennessee real estate, but also the ongoing expenses of maintaining a property that size. Professional-grade stables, regular maintenance of riding trails, property taxes on that much land, insurance costs, staff salaries for the people needed to keep everything running smoothly, this single romantic gesture probably cost Elvis more money than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. What makes this story even more fascinating is how it reflects the cultural attitudes of the 1960s toward wealth and romance. Elvis was operating in an era when excess was celebrated, when bigger was always better, and when demonstrating your love through extravagant material gestures was seen as the ultimate romantic expression. The ranch wasn't just about making Priscilla happy, it was also Elvis's way of showing the world that his woman deserved the absolute best of everything, regardless of cost or practicality. The ranch also became a gathering place for Elvis's extended circle of friends and family, turning what started as Priscilla's personal horse sanctuary into a social hub where some of the most interesting people of the era would come to relax and enjoy the incredible facilities Elvis had created. This transformed the property from a simple gift into a cultural landmark where music history was made during casual gatherings and impromptu jam sessions that happened in this beautiful, peaceful setting. From a psychological perspective, the ranch purchase reveals so much about Elvis's approach to relationships and his deep-seated need to provide for the people he loved. This wasn't just about impressing Priscilla or showing off his wealth. It was about creating security and happiness for someone who had become the center of his world. Elvis grew up with very little, and his success gave him the power to ensure that the people he cared about would never want for anything. The legacy of this incredible gesture extends far beyond the original purchase. The ranch became part of Elvis and Priscilla's love story, a tangible symbol of a relationship that captured the world's imagination and continues to fascinate people decades later. Every time someone talks about grand romantic gestures or celebrity excess, this story comes up as the ultimate example of what happens when unlimited resources meet unlimited love. But here's what I find most incredible about this whole situation. The ranch purchase perfectly encapsulates everything that made Elvis both beloved and controversial. His generosity was legendary, his love for Priscilla was genuine and deep, but his complete disregard for financial restraint also contributed to the money problems that would plague him later in life. This single gesture embodies both the best and most problematic aspects of Elvis's approach to wealth and relationships. The story of Elvis buying Priscilla a 163-acre ranch for her horse has become part of American cultural mythology, a tale that perfectly captures the excess and romance of the 1960s celebrity lifestyle. It's been retold countless times in books, documentaries, and articles about Elvis's life, always serving as the perfect example of how the king of rock and roll approached love, with complete intensity, unlimited resources, and absolutely no concern for what anyone else might consider reasonable or practical. Today, as we look back on this incredible story, it serves as both inspiration and cautionary tale. On one hand, it's impossible not to be moved by Elvis's desire to make Priscilla completely happy, regardless of what it cost him. On the other hand, it's a perfect example of how even the most well-intentioned gestures can become part of a larger pattern of financial irresponsibility that eventually creates serious problems. But ultimately, this story endures because it represents love at its most pure and extravagant, a reminder that sometimes, when you love someone enough, logic and practicality become completely irrelevant compared to their happiness.